I'm Karen, in my 40s. I lived with my husband Nick and our daughter Sophia, but my father-in-law, now in his 90s, asked us to move in. Nick has a brother, but he's a traveling worker. His situation is uncertain as to when he'll be able to return home, so the talk turned to us. My in-laws' house is 3 stations away, and we've been helping them with hospital visits, but due to their age, they asked us to move in for emergencies. When my father-in-law consulted us, Nick looked a bit troubled. His mother favored his older brother a lot and used to slander Nick, saying, "Your brother is so smart, why are you such a failure? Your brother will inherit this house, you should find a job and leave." I'm not sure if my father-in-law knew about this, but he said, "Your mom is looking forward to living with you guys too." When Nick consulted with his brother, he seemed relieved and left everything to us, saying, "It would help if you guys could move in." To be honest, I don't like my brother-in-law. He has a son the same age as my daughter Sophia, but he always compares them and looks down on my daughter. During high school entrance exams, despite not much difference, he looked down my daughter for aiming at a high school with a slightly lower score while boasting about his son aiming at a higher one. This happened over the New Year's holiday, just a few months before the exam. In the end, his son didn't get into the school he wanted, but when he decided to go to a private school, he looked down on us saying, "Poor people can only go to public schools, haha." Every time we gathered together for the new year, he boasted, "I'm the eldest son, I'll inherit this house." But now he completely left everything to us. However, since we got my brother-in-law's approval and my father-in-law's eager request, we decided to accept the offer to move in. Originally, we planned to sell the place we were living in once our daughter Sophia starts college and buy a new one for just the 2 of us, my husband Nick and me. But we decided to think of this move as just a year ahead of our schedule. Upon moving in, just as my father-in-law had said, my mother-in-law welcomed our family warmly. She gave the largest room to us, the next largest room to Sophia, and even offered to clean all the areas except for our room herself. When she said, "We'll do our laundry ourselves, but could you please take care of the meals for us?" I was more than happy since I was expecting that I would have to handle everything. Sophia only has 1 more year until college entrance exams. She was a little nervous about the change of environment, but she was relieved to get a decent room. She seemed pleased to be able to use a larger room than before. We decided to pay a few $100s in rent each month and split the cost of utilities and food. The cohabitation started in a much better atmosphere than I had expected. Nick seemed relieved, but after a few months, things started to change slowly. That day was when my mother-in-law was supposed to go to the hospital. Since I didn't know when I would be able to come back, she said, and she asked me to clean and do the laundry. I had just had a day off from my part-time job, so I accepted without thinking. However, when I went to the supermarket for groceries, I happened to see my mother-in-law. She was happily chatting with a friend at a cafe. At that time, I thought it was okay once in a while, but it became not just once in a while after that day. "I have to go to the clinic once a week, and I'll need you to take care of the cleaning and laundry every time." My mother-in-law says this apologetically, but I'm skeptical about whether she's really going to the clinic. She eats 3 meals a day and snacks in between. She is lively every day, sleeps well, and from my point of view, she seems healthy. But I decided to turn a blind eye because I would rather avoid ruining our relationship. I was preparing from the beginning that I would probably end up doing everything, and doing this once a week seemed not a big deal. However, after accepting this, my mother-in-law's request started to escalate. What was once a week became twice a week, then thrice, and on top of that, she said, "Could you please not move the trash can in our room? It's in the best spot right here. I just can't get enough energy going in the morning from your breakfast. I really need more healthier breakfast. Ideally, I'd like at least 5 side dishes. I don't want you to wash that handkerchief with other items because it's important," she said, among other complaints about how I do housework. She even suggested, "Why don't you quit your part-time job? It doesn't look good. Then you could take care of all the housework." Making me do all of the housework and complaining about it is so scary. I brush it off by saying, "I'll think about it." I had some savings for buying a condo, so I figured I could just move out if I got fed up with it. So with that attitude, about half a year passed since we started living together, when suddenly my brother-in-law returned. My mother-in-law was delighted at the news of his sudden job transfer, and as soon as my brother-in-law came back, her attitude changed dramatically. We were kicked out of the room we were using on the day my brother-in-law came back. She said that because my brother-in-law was going to use the biggest room, we should all use my daughter's room. Thinking about my daughter, my husband rebelled, but they didn't take it seriously. We had to use 1 room for 3 people, but my brother-in-law's influence didn't end there. I was told to adjust the meals to my brother-in-law's taste, to hang his suits in a certain way. Furthermore, my mother-in-law's nagging got even worse. Brother said he wants to eat food with a stronger flavor. I've always felt the same way, but your cooking is a lighter taste, she claimed. You know, what brother hates most is being woken up by the vacuum cleaner, so please don't use the vacuum until brother has woken up. Every time it's always, brother likes this, brother doesn't like that. And it's like they're implying that everything my brother-in-law says is correct, joining in saying, yes, that's right. My daughter-in-law and son won't be coming back. My son will be a university student starting next year. He says he's going to stay at that place until he graduates from high school. When my brother-in-law was saying this, my mother-in-law was nodding in agreement, saying, that's right. Considering he has important exams coming up, it would be pitiful to change his environment. My daughter is in the same situation, isn't she? Despite that, we changed her environment twice, from living alone to a 3-person room, didn't we? Holding back my desire to complain, I quietly carried on with the housework, because I knew that if I complained, it would come back many times over. The last thing I need is for my brother-in-law, who has always looked down on my daughter, to shift his target from me to her. I kept holding back, but I felt like I was quickly reaching my limit. It was the time when I thought I couldn't handle it anymore. My brother-in-law, who had been drinking, started to fight with my husband. As the eldest son, it's natural that I take over this place. When my wife and son come here, we'll take care of both Dad and Mom. You guys should get out of here quickly. Oh, you can leave right now if you want. Your wife, her cleaning is sloppy and her food is terrible. It's unbearable. Mom's still strong. We don't need your wife for housework. It's tiring to deal with your on-edge daughter, too. I'd be so satisfied if you guys could leave now. Actually, we don't need you anymore. I'm the eldest son. Now that I'm back, you guys should leave ASAP. Behind my brother-in-law, who is proudly the eldest son, my mother-in-law agrees with him as usual. Since your brother's wife is coming, we don't need your wife anymore. We only need a grandson, not a granddaughter. You're pitiful having a useless wife who can't cook, clean, or do laundry properly. You've always had a tough time. I actually wanted to live with your brothers. I just reluctantly agreed because your father said so. I never wanted to live with you at all. Inspired by my brother-in-law, my mother-in-law got carried away and began to say even more outrageous things. My husband, who is usually mild-mannered, seemed unable to bear it any longer. Enough, I get it. We should leave, right? We'll leave. Happy now? Stop speaking ill of Karen and Sophia, he shouted. This surprised even me. I had never heard my husband raise his voice in anger before. Neither of them expected him to explode in such a way, quickly downplaying their behavior, saying, "We were just joking," or "Don't take it so seriously." But my husband disregarded their excuses and, without uttering a single word, started to make his exit. This shift in his demeanor truly unsettled them. They turned pale and began to cling to my husband, their faces filled with desperation. Their self-serving attitudes were astounding. It felt ridiculous, having tolerated their behavior up until this point. I was in the middle of cleaning up after dinner, but I dropped everything to stand by my husband's side. "We were tired of living with you. If we both want the same thing, it's just right. I'll be leaving soon. Please rest assured." My brother-in-law and mother-in-law were both slack-jawed, making fools of themselves. Even I, who had always been so loyal, was now standing up against them. They probably couldn't imagine this as people who always think about themselves. Even now, I cannot forget about their expressions. My bold stance was all thanks to my husband. To be honest, as soon as my brother-in-law returned 2 weeks ago, my husband started looking for a rental property. We didn't know when my mother-in-law might revert to her old ways, or when my brother-in-law might start harassing our daughter again. There were too many uncertainties, so we began preparations to be ready to move out at any moment. We felt truly sorry for our daughter, having to change her surroundings so often, but it's better than staying here. We had a few places shortlisted, and by the next day, we had signed a lease for an available property and left our in-laws' place the following day. Afterwards, our daughter successfully got into college. She decided to live on her own, and we, as originally planned, bought a new apartment. It was a peaceful afternoon at the start of our new life, when a call came in. The caller ID showed it was my mother-in-law. My husband was reluctant to answer, but when the incessant ringing was too much to bear, he finally picked up. We could hear the sound of my mother-in-law sniffling, possibly crying over the phone. "I'm sorry for what happened back then. I know an apology might not make up for it, but can we put it all behind us? I want to live with you all again. The truth is, something terrible has happened to my son. My son and I, we can't seem to manage living together anymore." This is what my mother-in-law had to say. My brother-in-law had an affair within the company, and when it was discovered, he was demoted. That's why his sudden transfer had been decided. It seems his salary has dropped significantly, but my mother-in-law, who was indulgent with my brother-in-law, had not been receiving rent or living expenses from him, so she was oblivious to his situation until now. My brother-in-law thought he could keep the truth from being discovered, but a single letter shattered his scheme. It was a letter of proof sent by his wife. My brother-in-law, under the impression that his affair was not known, had passed off his demotion as a transfer, but his wife knew everything and seemed to have sprung divorce on him as soon as their son started college. On top of the fact that it was already difficult to live on my brother-in-law's income alone, he was saddled with alimony and child support payments, pushing him into a situation where he had no choice but to go into debt. It seems that my mother-in-law wanted to rely on my brother-in-law after she finished using the money left by her husband, but my brother-in-law was demoted and the debt led to a divorce. She won't have anyone to rely on for housework and nursing care. That's why she asked for help. "Can't you at least return my husband to me?" My mother-in-law pleaded with a desperate voice. Yes, my father-in-law is currently living with us. My mother-in-law, who could not oppose to my father-in-law, used to hurl abuse at my husband when my father-in-law was not present. And when she would complain about me, she always made sure that my father-in-law was not around. However, once my brother-in-law moved back, she seemed to think it was okay if my brother-in-law was there, and she started complaining in front of my father-in-law as well. When my husband confessed to my father-in-law about my mother-in-law's past abusive behavior, my father-in-law, who had not known about it, apologized to my husband. "I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner. And then I went ahead and suggested we all live together. Just do whatever you guys want." Those were my father-in-law's words, but my husband seemed to be worried about leaving him with my mother-in-law and brother-in-law. That's when I suggested that my father-in-law should move in with us. And so we ended up living together in the new house. Although my father-in-law was quite taken aback by my mother-in-law's behavior, he left her a decent amount of money, probably because of their long history together. Well, if he continued that life, he would have had it for a year. "Dad says he wants to live with us. We no longer intend to live with you, Mom, so don't start asking us for favors now." My husband quietly stated that and then hung up the phone. I would have liked him to say more, but given the significant damage already done, I decided it was good enough. According to what we later heard from my father-in-law, my mother-in-law apparently started working part-time at a convenience store despite her old age. As for my brother-in-law, he was unable to repay his debts with just his regular job and seemed to be working extra hours, even during the night and on his days off, sparing little time for sleep. They seemed to be enjoying their life of debt together. On the other hand, thanks to my father-in-law contributing half of the cost to our apartment, we have plenty of breathing room in our lifestyle. We are planning a trip with him to our daughter's place during the upcoming long weekend. We're looking forward to staying in a luxury hotel and seeing our daughter again after a long time.